Podcast. My name is Ben, your host, and today we have Matt, the CEO of Playgrid, on the stream. Matt, welcome.
Hey Ben, thanks for having me.
Hey, so glad that we get a chance to do this. I know this is going to be a really exciting one. Really been looking forward to this for a while. But before we dive in, it's time to level up.
Take it to the next level. Take it to the next level.
All right, friends, we're back. We're hyped. We're ready to rock on this beautiful Saturday morning. Matt, I am so excited that we get a chance to chat. I love that background. Clearly, you're in deep in the crypto gaming space. I would love to just hear your story of how you got to where you are and where that is.
Of course. So I guess you hear it very often, but I'm ex-gamer, naturally. So I was pretty close to the space. I used to play anything, really. World of Warcraft, I used to be Gladiator there, and some League of Legends, Heroes of the Storm, you name it. And naturally, I was trying to sell my assets at some point, right? So I got banned 2 times actually from Blizzard for trying to sell some of the accounts. So I realized, okay, that's not the proper way. But I was always kind of like not a big fan of streaming myself. So I was exploring the ways how to stay in the games, even though I was already getting old enough to kind of like not play the games. So when I explored NFT, it was just amazing. And I realized, yeah, that's really unlocking a crazy huge potential for both actually the studio, but also for the player itself. And it's giving us a lot of amazing opportunities. So naturally, I just dived into it and decided, okay, it's really fascinating enough. I want to be fully in the Web3 gaming. So I decided to launch Project Playgrid.
Okay, right on. So I want to take a step back for a second because I actually had a similar path of being a gamer first and then seeing the technology second. And interestingly enough, I too have played a lot of World of Warcraft and a lot of League of Legends in my day. The
That's
dopamine loops
good.
on those are so fun. And so thinking back to like when you first got exposed to crypto and the technology, how did that actually happen? And what about it specifically was that aha moment for you where you're like, oh wow, this has
Mhm.
real potential?
So I started exploring crypto, like Bitcoin, back in 2015, I think. And I said, okay, that's really like interesting concept. I was not so much about the technology, more about it's kind of like just interesting currency, and more in the terms like, yeah, it can be similar to gold, even though it's virtual, but it's interesting. So I started trading a little bit of Bitcoin back then. I basically took my hands off in 2017 because really, like, when the taxi drivers are telling you that they're buying Bitcoin, it's probably a good time to rethink your strategy and maybe take a break. So I stopped, and to be honest, I stopped for a really long time. I get back in, I would say, 2020, late 2020 actually, and really dived into it early last year when I explored the NFTs. So really, I immediately kind of like started thinking, okay, that's amazing that there are so many use cases for the NFTs. Not really on the art side. I never 100% understood like the concept around the NFT art, but I was more interested in like ticketing, real estate, luxury goods, and this kind of use cases. And then obviously I thought, okay, so well, gaming might be one of it. So I started Googling and I found like Axie Infinity, CryptoKitties, and all of these like early games, Gods Unchained, for example. I said, yeah, that's really like something that is here to stay for sure, and something I can really closely relate to because, as mentioned, we used to play games, so it's just good.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I think there's always that moment in any person's journey when they're deep in Web3, especially on the gaming side, where it clicks. And it feels like once that happens, and once you see it, you can't unsee it, and it doesn't go away. And I know personally, I have not been able to let it go. Like once I wrap my mind around it, I can't get out of it, and I don't want to. It's unbelievably fun, and I'm so grateful for it. Why do you think that is? Why do you think this is such a sticky idea that just won't, it's like the gum on your shoe that you cannot scrape off?
That's a very good question. So for me, on one side, it's really the amazing technology. It unlocks on all of the fronts. And I'm not really talking just about the ownership of the assets. For me, it's more about the data and potentially the interoperability. I know it's a buzzword, but really for me, that's really something strong and great use case. And I'm sure I want to be part of it as a gamer, not really so much as an investor or something, but really from the gaming perspective. And then I think it's the people, because really, of course, there are some people that are, how to say it politely, they are kind of like exploiting, let's say, the system. But most of the people I met in the whole like crypto space, not just the gaming, are really like amazing, super smart people that are trying to help everyone around them, and that's just amazing. It's really like filling you with energy, and you want to be part of this great ecosystem and build something there together with these amazing people.
Yeah, I definitely agree with I agree with both of those. I actually think the people in the space are so cool. I mean, it feels like we all kind of have a similar ethos here, especially right now when a lot of people are really scared, and so the people that are just kind of checking in for a quick stay are probably checked out right now, and the people that are here for longer are more likely the ones to be engaging with. That to me has been really a really interesting shift lately. So okay, so let's talk a little bit about how you actually started Playgrid, and what were those um, initial thoughts, like the initial idea. Where did that come from? How did you arrive at that?
Mm-hmm. So at the very beginning, I was thinking that there's just like so much information and so many players really like diving and kind of like going for the same information. So you want to see the games as soon as possible, because most of the players are actually investors, small retail investors. We want to get somewhere quickly. We want to play it, but also in the play to earn kind of era, we want to get something from it as well, right? And of course, like the sooner you enter the ecosystem, usually the higher rewards you could get as a player. So I started thinking, okay, so let's find a way how to bring this value to the players in general. And so I started putting more people together, and we wanted to just share the information about the games with community on Discord. Really as simple as that. But then we took a next step, let's say, and we're thinking really like, so what are the main pain points of the players, and ideally of the studios as well, and where can we see some intersection? And so we went further and thought about the marketing channels and strategies. Basically, the studios today, when they want to bring new players to the game, they often go for some form of airdrop. It can be Twitter giveaway, Gleam IO airdrop, or some form of giveaway to the players. But the problem is that when they do this kind of event, they are actually not sure who they are bringing into the game. And most of these players they bring are actually bots that are just sniping the rewards. And it's hurting both sides, because the studio is dropping NFTs to bots instead of players. And me as a player who want to get somewhere, want to get the airdrop either for being good in the game or just being early there, I have very little chance, because usually the first spots are already got by the airdrops. They say, okay, so let's explore this area. And I have a few years of background in data and analytics from consulting. So naturally, like, this is very interesting to me. And with blockchain, it's amazing that there is so much raw data sitting on the blockchain that you can use to actually identify this is bot, this is player, and from the players, this is better player or more like active player, and this is maybe flipper. And that's great because you can use this data to actually filter out the bots completely away, rewarding only the players. But you can also go a little bit extra mile, let's say, and select the players you want to reward. So maybe you want to drop something really valuable to only your core players, someone who got into your game in early alpha and stayed there, didn't sell the asset from the early pre-sale, but really is holding it for 1 year or something. And that's a player who you want to give NFT of a really huge value because you know that he deserves it. And you know that it won't be just a bot or just some sniper who will get it and immediately sell it on the market, right? So that's actually what started to shape the vision of Playgrid and where we are going right now. To use the data to help studios find the real players and give them the airdrops, and works on both sides as well. So for the player also, for example, if you play a lot of card games, we can on Playgrid recommend to you to try some new carding game that can be interesting to you. So you don't actually need to go through all of the different Twitters, blog posts, Discord servers, and you can just have some easier way to discover the games and jump into them, play them, and possibly get some reward out of it.
I love that. So you're basically facilitating discovery between gamers and studios in a net positive way because you're filtering out the bots by analyzing the data on the blockchain, understanding the different types of players, like the hyperactive players versus maybe those that only show up sometimes, and then you're presenting that in a nice way and doing it through airdrops so the studios get the gamers that they want, the gamers get the free stuff and like the airdrops and the early access and the know about the new games that they want. And so it seems like that's just a massive value. I love that model. That's a hugely
Thanks.
advantageous model. Have you seen a virtuous cycle start to develop where the the games and the players are kind of feeding each other and there's a positive loop there? Or like how has the market been reacting to that sort of model? Because it seems like a win-win that would just kind of feed itself because players get excited. So they tell their friends, studios really like it. So they would recommend it to their friends who are probably other builders and studios. Like, how's that been going for you guys?
Exactly. It's exactly as you mentioned. There is a really strong kind of like network effect happening on the side because basically the more studios that want to do airdrop with us, the higher the value for the players, and that's bringing more players, and again that's some extra value to the studio. So it's really amazing to see how this works. And for example, I was a little bit worried about one thing, and that's that basically to get a higher chance for the airdrop, you as a player want to give us more addresses because you can be I don't know, let's say you're playing one game on Solana where you have a good score but you're using Phantom Wallet, then you play a game on Ethereum or Polygon and you're using MetaMask. And another platform to really like have the full picture about your player and being eligible to as much airdrops as possible, you want to use both addresses. And I was a little bit worried that users would not really want to give on the platform more than one address. But I was super surprised that actually the vast majority of the users are providing more than one address, and they are really doing that. So I think that's great, and I believe that this could help. And of course, there are some extra steps that we can take in the future. Maybe create the player profiles for them, and just go a little bit more towards the social gaming. But since we are early project, we started this year, we still have a lot work to do on the airdrop side. So maybe next year.
So y'all are pretty early, and what you're essentially building is a two-sided, not exactly, but a two-sided marketplace in a way. That's how I'm thinking of it in my mind, right? You have your gamers, you have your studios. In all two-sided, maybe I'll use a better term, platform, a two-sided platform. In all platforms like that, everybody always faces a chicken and egg problem where you need both in order to make it so valuable that the other one wants to show up. But how do you get both if you need both? So, chicken and egg, which one do you go after first? It seems like what y'all did was you built a really cool tool for the studios first to understand the player data by scraping and understanding and weeding out bots versus real players. Was that how you approached it first? Was go build relationships with studios and offer them value first, and then you tell the players, hey, we have all these studios that are happy to airdrop you stuff? Or how did you solve that chicken and egg problem?
That's exactly the way. Yes, and that's where we are right now. So first of all, we tested out how much of interest we see on the player side, because eventually it's really like the players that we want to bring in. And we launched our campaign for like 4 or 5 weeks, and I was lucky enough to bring over actually 50,000 players registered on the platform. So that was kind of like great feedback for us, showing that there is a strong interest from the player side. And right now, what we are doing is that we are talking to the studios, and we have around 100 studios already in the pipeline, let's say. And exactly, we want to do this very, very easy product, let's say, where we just help them filter out all of the bots and help narrow the airdrop to the users they define up front. So it can be, as I mentioned, the early adopter who still holds the asset or something like that, and keep slowly building on here the network on both sides. But with blockchain, it's amazing that one side is pretty much covered simply because the data is public. And you can always, just like any address that is signed to the airdrop of the studio, we can instantly check and see, okay, so but this is a bot. We have it flagged here, or maybe this is a really flipper that sells the asset in the first 5 minutes after the pre-sale, and the studio wants to get someone who holds the asset. So we can easily narrow it down even without the user ever visiting Playgrid, because simply the data is already there.
I love that. Now you mentioned going from getting 50,000 players in an event. What did you do to actually get those 50,000 players? And did they sign up for email, or did they register for something? Like what was the actual conversion that you're measuring, a one successful unit, and how did you get to then 50,000?
So it was a registration on our platform. So email password and confirming the email. And we had our own airdrop back then, and also we had few airdrops from the studio. So we gathered initially first airdrops and first NFTs to drop into our community, and that's basically how we started. But what I was really surprised and amazed by is that there were so many people just actively promoting the platform, because they simply liked what we are building, and they wanted to exactly share it with their friends because it was early on. And that was really great to see that, like, you don't even need to push something so much, because if the players find the value there, they are super happy to share it to their friends as well. And now we really want to deliver what we promised, and start doing the airdrops even this year, to really start rewarding the players on the platform and start giving them the NFTs. Yeah.
That is awesome. Yeah, I think a lot of people, what they don't realize is the power of a really, really great product that has such good product market fit that it actually becomes a value add for the user to be the first one in their friend group to share it with their friend group. Because that is out, if it's that good, then by them sharing, they're providing alpha to their group, so they gain in social status, and they
Exactly.
gain social currency just from sharing that. That's the best kind of product that you want to have, especially when it doesn't feel like they have to buy anything. Like, they don't have to put up any money or anything to participate. They get stuff. They get airdrops. So I absolutely
Exactly.
love that model. It's almost reminiscent of, because I study a lot of investors. There was this huge fund called the Nomad Fund by these
Hmm.
two individuals that are more philosophers and psychologists than than anything. But the big theme of their fund was um, it was it was like platform economy shared, or economies of scale shared, where
Hmm.
as they were building up value in their, so like Costco would be an example, as they're getting better deals on their products, they're passing those deals along to customers and keeping a thin margin, but all of the wins that they have, they're sharing with their customers. And so they're actually enabling their customers to become longer term customers and stay with them forever because they're always passing along those savings. This to me feels like a very interesting version or remix of that similar idea. Did you come into this thinking, hey, I want to find a way to where it's net positive for both sides and it's this virtuous cycle, or did it just kind of turn into that? Like, how did you engineer the actual product this way?
Yeah, I think it was kind of natural because back then, really, I was looking into as doing my own research, but also talking to the other players. Everyone's doing the research to find something that there can be early on. And of course, one part of it was I want to be early because I want to get the early adopter rewards or airdrops or something really some OG role on Discord. So nature, I was exploring this a little bit more and how the airdrops work, and it was really pity that back then and still like there are just so many bots out there, and you have free sites that will just spam the Twitter the tweets based on some hashtags, and you don't even need to pay anything. You don't need to program your own bot. You just open a browser and you do it right away. I think that's really bad because it's really hurting both sides. Whereas on the other side, correct as I mentioned, like it's a win-win because the studio is getting players and they are rewarding their loyal players, and that's actually what matters, right? To have players that are playing your game, not really just someone to get rich by your pre-sale, but really engaging with the players and building game that is by itself good enough that the players are returning to it. So yeah.
Now, when you're thinking about the difference between a bot and then the different types of players, and maybe this is where the secret sauce happens, you can't talk about it too much, but maybe you could just talk about how you actually distill down who is a bot, who is a player. How do you know?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And yes, part, let's say, of the secret sauce. But basically, what we are really looking for is the behavior on the blockchain. And also, there are a couple of ways to that are mainly used for the anti-money laundering, where you're trying to flag the addresses as well. So we are using kind of a mixture of these two. One is algorithmical identification of the wallets, and the second one is really just focusing on the behavior and even the maturity of the wallet, like when it was created, and we are trying to get the match um, to the user who's using the wallet. So if there is a, let's say, 3 addresses already flagged as a bot for me as a Matt from Czech Republic, then it's very likely that if I create another like 5 wallets, they might be bots as well. So we are using this kind of logic, and we always like when it comes to the airdrop, it's studio who decides. So we are transparent. We let them know how we work with the addresses and how we let them filter out the bots. And they like to add some extra criteria anyway. So they want to see, for example, that the player is either from their game or even from a different game. They want to see that, yeah, it's someone who holds the asset, for example, because studios are not really in favor of flippers because they are not the best for the economy. I mean, they're creating some volume. It's not really like a bad behavior, but still, it's not a player, right? It's just someone who is there for flipping the asset. So we can like find a combination of the, let's say, KPIs that we use to identify the good players for the use case for the specific airdrops.
Yeah, I think what a lot of people may not realize about flippers and what they do to the ecosystem is because at first I even thought I was like, okay, well, let flippers flip because they're generating royalties for the project, and that seems fine. But when I took a little bit deeper look at that, what I saw, and I'm curious to know what you saw around this, but what I saw was when they would come in, it's essentially a pump and dump, what people are trying to do early on, often with NFT drops. And so they come in and they just want to pump the price. So they'll maybe even pay on the front end. And then as soon as it goes higher, they want to actually keep pumping it as much as possible. And so what that does is it prices out a lot of your legitimate players. I mean, legitimately, you want players that are going to play. You want guilds that are going to invest for the long run, and then through their players play. And or you want really good, high quality investors who are in it for the long run, who are probably going to participate in some sort of scholarship program, but they're going to care a lot more, and they're not going to want to flip. So they're not going to cause a tremendous amount of volatility. And so either you pump so hard that you're pricing those people out, because they're most of the time they're taking a logical approach to this, and they can say, okay, well, I expect to earn this amount of yield over the long run, and so based on that, I can do some basic, financial analysis and discounted future cash flows model or something to come up with a reasonable expectation of price today and what that should be, or just based on expectations. But if that goes too high, it prices those people out because they're taking a rational approach, whereas the flipper is mostly just gambling. But then on the flip side, no pun intended, but on the flip side, then when they start selling and they drive down the price, a lot of times that can almost kill a community where it stands. I mean, you may have some loyal people that are in there that are, ride or dies, but not everybody's like that. And if a drop goes badly, or a price dumps too hard too quickly all at once in one event, especially if it was supposed to be an exciting and positive launch event, that can kill it, and the community could get spooked, and it could be really damaging to the project. Are you seeing that same thing that I'm seeing? Or if it's different, what else are you seeing? And maybe you could just help us understand this phenomena.
Definitely, and it's a very good point that to some level, the flippers are not really hurting the economy, because, as you mentioned, they are bringing some volume, some royalties back to the creators. Let them flip, right? But I think that it's really like the volume of these guys that are flipping the assets that can really hurt the project, because if you're flipping, let's say, I don't know, 0.5% of the total volume, that's nothing. But if you have few whales, or actually maybe some guilds, even whoever, who's got bigger buying power and can really have so much power that they can actually buy all of the assets when they are sitting at $50 per NFT, and then just sell them on $200 NFT, then it's really hurting the project. And we saw it in many examples, and it's both NFT but also the regular tokens. On the token side, I think it's pretty much covered already, because the projects are really careful about the liquidity and making sure that if there is someone who's buying higher volume of tokens mainly in the pre-sales and private sales, they have some vesting schedule, and they can't just simply dump 10% of the tokens in one day, right? There are some mechanisms to protect here, so that's pretty much okay. But on the NFT side, I think it's much more less advanced here, and we don't see so many safety mechanisms. So when there is a pre-sale of, let's say, only 100 NFTs, it's very easy for someone who's got enough credit buying power to really just buy all of them, right? And it can be from $60 to $100, and then just sell it right away for $250. It's really like you got this monopoly on the small market of these NFTs, these particular NFTs. And that's the point where it can really hurt the economy, because then the entry barrier for a regular player can really go like 5x, 10x against kind of like natural value. And so that's one way I see where we can really where these flippers, especially the more valuable flippers, can hurt the economy. But on the other side, it's exactly as you mentioned, when they're selling, it goes both ways. So when you suddenly sell all of your assets, or like 5% of the tokens, it goes down and takes a steep dive. And that's something that is scary to me and all the other regular players, or very like small investors, because you see that there is something bad, and you might get fear, panic, you start selling as well. It just sparks the selling wave. And as you mentioned, it can even kill a project at some point, where really just everyone gets scared and they sell the tokens, sell the NFTs. They're priceless, and it's bad.
Yeah, and then what I've also seen happen is that, so it's the cycle, right? They're pumping and then they're dumping. Well, the advanced whales, what I've seen them do is then once it hits that rock bottom, they buy again. They buy back in. and they send it right back up, and they keep riding that cycle up and down. And they're obviously facing a little bit of risk, because what if they load in and then everybody just leaves and nobody wants to play anymore? Well, they might be stuck with some things they didn't quite intend. But I've definitely seen some things where whales will come in and they're happy to play that, and they understand the momentum. And that's really what gives them the power, because they have the buying power, and so they're really able to understand and play that momentum, like we were talking about. When it's high up and
Yeah.
they're starting to sell up there, then they can kind of push it down and keep that momentum going. And then once it goes down, if they still think that they can ride that wave, they can come in and buy at the bottom, and then ride that back up, because people will be like, oh, there's buying again, FOMO comes in, let me buy in, I don't want to miss out, all that stuff. So it's actually really interesting to understand these different things. And I think as a gamer, as an investor, as a project, it's important to know how these things really go down, because it's often not what people truly think. And you definitely can't rely on your own emotions and the FOMO to tell you the right way to do it. I think it's best
Right.
to study the people that are already killing it out there. So I feel like we kind of beat this idea to death. So I want to go to the next one. When you're thinking about, hey, I'm building a project, I'm a founder, I'm a builder, CEO, and obviously I, I am extremely bullish on this whole space, and I don't think you'd start a project here if you weren't as well. What are you kind of thinking as far as your long-term vision? I've seen on Twitter how you're saying you're building the Steam of blockchain games, or just the connecting players with the best games and rewarding them for playing. But I really like that idea of the Steam of blockchain games. How did you get to that being kind of your tagline? And then maybe you can extrapolate on that and tell us what the true long-term vision is for the project and what you're seeing out there.
Right. So this team, actually, I thought it was pretty really capturing the vision, because I see Steam as more as a gateway to the regular games. Because for me, it's not just a distribution platform where you can download the game, but it's really where you discover the game, where you have all of the ratings of the games, etc. And it's more complex. And for the studios as well, it's providing them a very important marketing channel, not just distribution. Like you can just have your own launcher. It's not about difficult technology. It's more about the network that is there already created. So that was our thinking, that we are in the long run, really long run, trying to achieve something similar. The Playgrid should be place where player Web 2, Web 3 doesn't matter. Just go and find the game, easily download the game, not necessarily through Playgrid, but it can be just a button that will redirect you to a site of the game where you can download it. But really just find it, play it, and ideally get some rewards from it. So we are thinking about ways how to bring in the Web 2 player, the, let's say, real players. And I think like almost everyone is, right. It's really like everyone is trying to bring in the masses and the Web 2 players. But here we're really focusing on the discovery, that we review every game before we publish the profile on Playgrid, because we want to make sure that we are trying to eliminate the risk for the players. Of course, we can't do it in all of the cases. It's just like we all are people, so we are trying to just speed up the discovery, highlighting something that we feel important about the game on both the pro and also the con side, highlighting that maybe community looks a little bit botted or not really active, or maybe on the other side saying that the team is amazing and has really like a huge experience in the regular gaming. And all of this should just speed up the process of discovery for the player. It's not really I would say supplementing the own research of the players. And of course, it's not really something that you should base your investment or portfolio on, but it should help you really speed up the research. You select, and it's really on Playgrid, it's 3 to 5 clicks to find out all of the strategic games on Solana, for example. And it should show you the best and most played games up front. We open the profile, you see the basic information, the links, some transaction data from blockchain like the volume and these basics, and also our short paragraph where we review the game, saying, yeah, we like the team, we like the gameplay, and we might don't like I don't know, community there or something. Really just bringing the information, and then the user will do his own research and focus on the game. In the long run, we want this to open to players as well. So as we are working with data, we can use the same data to verify that the user actually played the game and is someone who can review the game. Because, you know, if you just let everyone review the games, then again, you will have issues with bots that, or just, you know, studios paying some money to people to just write reviews for them. So that's something we want to avoid. And again, we can use the data to see, okay, these are real players that play the game. These are the players that can review the games as well. So that's pretty much on the discovery side. But also on the other side, we are working with a lot of partners and want to expand even more here to really reduce the barriers of entry. So for me right now, there are two important areas. One is the whole circle of, you know, exchange, KYC, MetaMask creation, just really getting into the game. It's a process that kills pretty much every Web2 player, because we are used to click on two buttons to get into a game, and now suddenly you really need to take a long process. If you are new to crypto, the KYC can take a few days, so it's really annoying, right? So we want to really simplify this, enabling the social login into the games and really streamline the flow and the process. So that's one part, and the other part is the capital barrier. If you are used to play AAA games for free, you just simply won't pay $300 for some NFT to try the one game, right? So that's where we are focusing a little on the renting in the long run. We already have like two partners that will help us here. But basically, the idea is that on Playgrid, you should have at least should be able to find tools and third-party providers that can help you get into the game as fast as possible and for as little investment as possible. So you can at least try the game, and then if you like it, of course you can buy these 300 NFTs. It's up to you, but the idea is to kind of like make sure that you can try the game as easily as possible before doing this whole circle and the investment as well.
Okay, so these are huge ideas.
Yeah.
I absolutely love the idea of being able to build a review engine where you know that only people who have actually played the game and who are, I don't know if certified is the right word, but they have proven through their on-chain data and record that they in fact have played the game, and so they in fact can have a valid opinion that others should care about because it's all on chain, and we know that for sure. That I think is going to be a massive product. I'm very excited to see how that turns out. And then the other idea of really jumping into, and to me that's like a scholarship idea, the second one, where those who have NFTs can rent out to those who do not have NFTs but may have time. And that to me is a great way to reduce friction in the space. And it actually does it in a couple of ways that I've seen. I'm curious to know if you agree with me on this, or if you're seeing something different. But I actually think this helps on the guild side as well, because for a guild, their whole business model a lot of times is the scholarship model, where they raise money, they buy assets, they rent those assets out to players. Well, what happens if they raise money and they go buy assets in a game that crashes? Well, they probably just lost all of that investment. And so if they make a couple of bad investments, then they could destroy their guild, and it's pretty difficult for them to consistently make really good decisions there. um, Even more so on the player side. You know, if the player is going to have to put up capital, like you were saying, that can be a huge barrier to entry. So I actually see a world where renting is going to be a lot more ubiquitous. It's going to be, I think the renting is going to be guild to guild as well as guild to player, because I think the guilds are going to want to rent to each other, because there's this balance of NFTs to players, and some guilds are NFT heavy and some guilds are asset heavy. And so, you know, if you have more NFTs than you do players, that's still a problem, because you need that cash flow to justify that capital expenditure. And so if you're missing out on cash flow, you're still missing out, and that's painful for guilds too. So I think they're going to be renting to each other, and so facilitating an ecosystem where the renting can happen in a seamless way and you're removing points of friction I think that's going to be a huge game changer for the space, and I'm actually very, very excited about that. But I'm curious if you're seeing kind of those similar issues and what your thoughts are about how the scholarship system is going to evolve over time.
Hmm. I think a very, very good point here that it's really important to think about this use case and the guild to guild renting because yeah, it's really capital heavy and will be more and more with more games coming into the space. Suddenly, it wouldn't be enough to just have something in Axie and I know Sandbox, but suddenly you would really need to have at least 30 games or something to kind of stay relevant to the players. But I think, and it's might be not super popular opinion, but I think in the long run, the guilds will need to adjust and drop from the scholarship model because we see more and more advance on the technology side. And I think it's a new standard of 4907 that's actually allowing the renting of NFTs even without the middlemen. So I think that this is something that we are really looking into, but again, like in the long run, and it will be through our partners because we can't do everything on ourselves, right? But I think that once we master the technology and we will really have a standard that allow us to rent the NFTs player to player, really like decentralized and have the functions there that you can specify, okay, I'm renting the NFT for a day, or I'm renting the NFT for only 10 games, or really like the flexibility that it can be used in most of the games and most of the use cases. Then suddenly you don't need a guild because you can as a player just buy the assets or earn them in the game and then rent them to other players through third parties and cut the middleman, which is a guild in this case. So I think that maybe in the longer run it's going to be more player side renting, and guilds might be more focused on the expensive assets. So we can see, and of course it's a very wild prediction because who knows what will happen with Sandbox, but maybe the Sandbox will be the one metaverse in the future, and the land there could go much much higher than is right now. So I think that maybe the guilds will be more about buying these very expensive assets because they have them today as well in many cases, right? They are the owners of the land, so they could be specializing on these expensive assets that are almost impossible as a player to get, and the simple NFTs that cost till few thousand USD, that's something that the players can buy themselves and rent across the network of players as long as we have some third party to enable this.
Yeah, that's an interesting prediction. I'm very excited to see how all this plays out. I feel like we'll get
Same
to be
here.
observers watching the future of humanity and technology getting created in front of ours, and at some point, at some level, building it ourselves. So I know we've been on for a while. I want to be very cognizant of your time here. So just got a couple more questions for you. Really appreciate the time you shared so far. Want to scope out and just talk about the gaming sector, the metaverse sector, crypto gaming in general. I love asking this question because I don't know the answer to it. How early are we really, or where are we in the chronology of this whole thing? And maybe you could just touch on that, like where we are and where you see us going and at what time intervals.
Hmm. That's a very tough question, of course. That's maybe the hardest. So I think we are very early still. We see that the market is, in terms of like volume and then the dollar amounts are, is pretty big already. But still, I believe we are super early. And right now we see this bear market and kind of like correction, which will actually, I really believe, help us a lot to find the right way moving forward. Because till now, what we saw is studios, most of them really like indie studios with no gaming experience, just doing new games. And they were heavily focusing on the tokenomics and really trying to figure out the financial side of it. And on the player side, the same. People were not really interested in the games. They just wanted to be somewhere early on so they can invest something, ideally get $100 for NFT and get out with 2.5K and that's it. And repeat till you're happy. So I think that was like the scenario yesterday, but today we start to see a little bit shift from this little exploiting way of the whole like gaming towards more like, okay, so maybe we really want to have a game that is actually playable and not just a super cool deck or video or something that we can use to raise money. And I think that that's really important point, and that will really help us define where we are heading in the long run, because right now we are kind of like deciding on the right way where to go. And I always believe that the play to earn, like the model we saw where average gamer is earning even like thousands of USD per month, is just crazy. That's not sustainable. That's not possible in the long run. For me, it's more like an evolution from the free to play. So in the free to play, we see like around, I think, 2% of players that are putting the money in and kind of like covering the whole ecosystem behind the game. And I believe that the Web3 gaming can go a little bit further. That it's not just like this free to play, but this like free and the play and earn. So you're getting, but really like single digit dollars, maybe not really like $1,000, something small, some peanuts for playing the games. And more interesting will be the ownership of the asset. So, for example, if you would play League of Legends in first season, you get your Kyle skin because you played ranked. That's something that even average gamer was able to achieve, to get this skin, but he would need to be there early. And that's something that you can monetize very well over the years, because now it's a very rare skin. So if it's not, so it will be a little bit more like towards the loyalty, I would say, than simply like being there and doing one quest every day on 100 different accounts, trying to get the $10 per day on the daily quests.
I definitely think you're right there. And especially when esports starts becoming more intertwined with Web3, the potential for NFTs to take on more value in the form of sentimental value is probably going to be a big driver of this. For example, let's say your favorite streamer is using a specific skin and no scope headshots whoever in the world championship of 2024. Well, that becomes really cool because of that narrative. And it'll be like having the shoes of Michael Jordan or the basketball of LeBron James that he shot the winning shot with, or something cool like that. That to me is where there's going to be a ton. I feel like there's a lot of untapped potential there, and it's going to be really interesting. And I agree with you too. It's probably not going to work out to where people are going to be able to play a game, do a quest, and get rich from that quest every day. Like that's probably not where we're headed. So I really like the outlook that you have on the NFTs and the future of it. So maybe just to wrap up here, any last ideas or things that you wanted to share? I know we're way over time that we had booked, so I appreciate you.
No worries.
Again,
Great discussion. So yeah, I think like maybe one point, I think we should more inspire in the Web2 space. I think that there's a huge disconnect, even like between the Web3 studios and Web2 studios. Maybe there's a lack of experience. I don't know. But I think that, for example, when we talk about the economy, there are Web2 examples that are working. At one point, we have things like Roblox and this kind of like metaverses and creators economy. On the other side, we have, for example, World of Warcraft. You mentioned we both play it. It's again, it's a great economy by itself. It's working, where people are playing the game, earning gold. They can farm it. They can help actually boost someone for a big chunk of gold that they can further resell. It's working there, and there are so many examples that already kind of like figured out the whole economy of the game. And I think we can just be a little more open to these models, explore them, and maybe try to develop them in the Web3 games, because I believe it can work. Of course, it's harder because suddenly you have it open, you have more money into it. So yeah, as you mentioned, it's bringing in the whales and flippers that are not really easy to predict upfront. But still, we shouldn't be so much disconnected. We can learn so much in the Web2 space, and I think that might help us all in the space.
I think so too. Matt, I am tremendously appreciative of your time. I really, really enjoyed getting to chat today. Thank you for coming on the show. I'm also super bullish on Playgrid. I think you guys have a really interesting model. And I would encourage everybody that's watching and listening to go sign up, get some airdrops, participate in that network, get in early. Don't FOMO. Don't be a flipper. Matt will know. And yeah, just wanted to say thank you again.
Amazing. Thanks, Ben. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise. And everybody watching and listening, I want to thank you all. I love you all. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being a part of the Crypto Gaming Institute community. Y'all are the best. And I will see you all on the next episode.